Good morning and welcome to our GIS for the Greater Good webinar. We are reaching out and holding this webinar during this time of working from home, increased visibility on healthcare and healthcare access, and widespread focus on racial equity, as we have been so encouraged to see GIS persist across the nonprofit community. Quick note, we will be recording this webinar and posting it on the Esri website and YouTube channel, so you can revisit it and share with others in your community. All right, so we do have 4 members of Esri staff presenting today. My name is June Anderson. I work with the nonprofit program and its members from Esri's inside sales team and within the broader global business development team. We also have Diana Lavery, who's a product engineer for Esri's Living Atlas team and has collaborated with the nonprofit team on a number of projects. Rebecca Lehman is also with us, who supports nonprofit program members from within the mid-market space and also within the global business development team. And finally, we have Amanda Stenko, who is a solution engineer with Esri's Geo Experience Center and has also worked with the nonprofit team here and there. So we all typically work out of Esri's headquarters in Redlands, California, but of course have been working from home amidst the COVID-19 pandemic. We hope that you excuse any dogs barking or children playing in the background as we present. It's kind of a new format that we're working with. But before we do start, a little housekeeping. If you have any questions during the presentations, please type them into the question box in your GoToWebinar control panel. We have another team member, Emily Swanson, monitoring the questions during the presentation, and we will leave time for questions and a little bit of conversation at the end. We also have a quick survey at the end, so please stick around and provide feedback for us there as well. All right, so our agenda today. Throughout this, the year 2020, basically, Esri has remained committed to supporting users to create a better world using GIS. I know for sure I'm biased, but I do believe that so much of the meaningful work that comes from users like you in the nonprofit community. It's actually a lot of the reason why Esri launched the nonprofit program in 2010 to get technology, training, and services to nonprofits. So we are thankful that so many of you have taken the time today to join us to learn more about this topic, and we hope that you can gain skills and ideas to apply in your work. We're going to start off with some information on what Esri and the nonprofit user community have been up to, provide a few demonstrations on workflow Esri has built to support our users' work during this time, and then we're going to look forward to what is coming up this year and beyond, and then of course questions and quick survey at the end. So throughout the course of the pandemic, Esri has been creating and gathering resources related to COVID-19 response on our COVID-19 GIS Hub. As with most things Esri does, our goal is to use maps and data to see what others can't. We wanted to provide a central resource hub to help users better understand, prepare for, and respond to COVID-19 within their organizations and within their broader communities. So I'm sure by now, many of you have visited our hub site to help in your work this year, but if you haven't, here are some actions you can take and resources you can find there. You can request GIS assistance through a submission form, which will lead you to Esri's disaster response program. This program is providing access to ArcGIS Online, ArcGIS Hub Basic, and ArcGIS Insights for 6 months through the COVID-19 response package. You can also explore user-created maps, dashboards, applications, and Esri-generated templates and more centered around mapping the spread of the virus. You can explore featured story maps for narrative accounts on what other organizations are doing to actively fight the virus. And we have also included direct links to the World Health Organization and Centers for Disease Control, so you can check back on current recommendations. So this is definitely a resource to bookmark and come back to often. Modeled after the structure of the COVID-19 Hub, we've also launched the Racial Equity GIS Hub. So here you can also request GIS assistance, review established workflows, maps, templates, best practices, different data sets, applications, and those narrative story maps that are focused on advancing the great and necessary work of racial equity in our communities. Although the pandemic has rapidly changed the way we connect with one another, collaboration and community, I'm sure you know, have never been more important. So we do recognize that nonprofits are often positioned to look out for those in need, whether that's vulnerable communities, places, or ecosystems. And we've been so encouraged by the GIS user community's response and grateful for our ability to connect organizations to each other during this socially distant time. So now more than ever, we need nonprofit organizations and the work everyone is doing, and it is Esri's goal to assist in the impact that that work has. We've seen incredible work come out of the Esri nonprofit GIS user community this year. So this work is absolutely saving people's lives. I did want to share a few highlights and then turn it over to my colleagues to showcase some of these important workflows in action. One nonprofit resource you may want to take advantage of is the partnership Esri has with the organization GIS Core. So this Esri partner is fully supported by thousands of volunteers, which I know can be enticing given some of the constraints when operating a nonprofit organization. GIS Core focuses on facilitating an exchange of volunteer-based GIS services. So you can request volunteer services from the thousands of volunteers who have already taken the pledge to assist, or you can take the pledge yourself and sign up to volunteer your GIS skills. A couple other organizations like Team Rubicon, they have been using demographic and lifestyle data and other live data feeds for situational awareness and to reach those most at risk. YMCA has been monitoring the status of their facilities across the country in real time to support decision-making around safety in each location. And other organizations are using GIS to share out information and resources to communities. Like previously mentioned, GIS Core, they actually have a crowdsourced COVID-19 testing site. So they've collected data from crowdsourcing, so you can review where local testing sites are. In the same vein, Atlanta Community Food Bank has a food resource locator. So these examples are just some of a lot that we're seeing in our nonprofit community. There are quite a few workflows currently that we as kind of a company, as kind of a nonprofit community, need to reimagine using new tools. So whether that's applying for grants, delivering services, or planning operations, we do want to share with you today 3 different workflows that exemplify the power of ArcGIS to meet you at each level along your learning journey, starting with understanding your community, moving to planning your response, and then taking action toward better outcomes. To start us off, Diana from Esri's Living Atlas team will show us how to find ready-to-use layers, which we can use to create our own maps. So I'm going to hand it over to Diana.
Thanks, June. So the Living Atlas is, it's a really, really cool way to tap into all the great GIS work that's already been done. Previously, in the traditional sense of GIS, Organization A needed to build their own GIS in order to get started, create all the layers from scratch. And Organization B had to do the same thing. But now with the web, with ArcGIS Living Atlas, we can all tap into the GIS and get started a lot faster. So here I am on the Living Atlas of the World homepage. There's some info about what's new and what it is and stuff, but the best place to get started is the Browse tab. And I'm going to show a few layers that are going to be of interest to a lot of the nonprofit community and those interested in vulnerable populations. We've got data in here from CDC, USDA, HUD, Census, and NOAA, USGS, and more. A really popular one is the CDC Social Vulnerability Index. And this is a layer that has all kinds of great info already joined to boundaries, already for you to use and get started. The best part about the Living Atlas is that these layers are fully documented. So you're not gonna be stuck scratching your head as to, well, what does that mean? Or where can I find more information about these things? The item details page is always very, very well documented for a lot of these things. Another one is the summer meal sites. Data from USDA for children who are on free and reduced price lunch. Where can they go during the summer? We had the 2019 one up for a while, but now we've got the 2021 here available to you, ready to use, and freely available in terms of bringing it in to your map. There's also another really popular one is the homeless point in time count. So HUD, every January, they put out this whole network of volunteers who go out on the streets and actually count the homeless population. Well, we've got that in layer form, ready to use here for you. And finally, another great data set, one of my favorites, is Census Bureau's American Community Survey. And we actually have the most current ACS data here in terms of all kinds of different tables that ACS publishes, just already matched to boundaries, already symbolized for you. The fields all have nice aliases on them, which I'll go into in a little bit. And this will really help you jumpstart your work. You don't have to build layers from scratch. You don't have to build your own GIS. You can tap right into my the whole ArcGIS Living Atlas of the World, which is kind of like the web GIS. So that's one way to access it, to browse. Now, say we're working in a map itself, and we're building a map for our community in Salt Lake City. And let's say I want to add layers from the Living Atlas. And I'm going to use child poverty as the example here. And I can actually say only show content within my map area. So if you don't have it for Salt Lake City, don't even show it to me. So you can think of that browse experience on the Living Atlas homepage as kind of like the target.com experience, where you can browse different categories and read up on all the details of different items. Here, when you're in the map viewer working away, I think of this as like I'm actually in Target and I just want to see what do they have on child poverty in Salt Lake City. These American Community Survey context for child well-being layers rise to the top, and I can see all that documentation there and say, yes, I want to add this to my map. And it's going to bring in this already symbolized layer at the tract level here, since we're zoomed in to a city, of child poverty. And the pop-ups are, you know, they're actually a nice report. You can think of them instead of just rows and columns of data. I can see complete sentences, I can see graphs and things like that. But let's say I want to modify this slightly. I know this child well-being layer has all kinds of other different attributes in it. And one that I'm interested in is children with no broadband. So I'll just change the attribute here. It's going to evaluate this. Yep, okay. So say I want the percent, and maybe I also want to add the count. There it is. Okay. So it's actually going to suggest different types of mapping styles that are appropriate for both of these. Color and size is a great one where the color represents the percent and the count is represented by the size. And we can go in and adjust this kind of stuff. There's one tract in the US where there's actually over 4,000 kids without broadband, but in Salt Lake City, it looks like there's a lot less. So if I drag this down, I get a lot more signal coming through in my map. So I'll click OK, and I can change the color ramp and really customize this, change the breakpoints, things like that. And then when I want to be done with my map, I'll click Save, and it'll show up actually as an item in my own content. Even though I don't own this layer, I'm configuring this web map. So another example of this color and size, this is a finished map of color and size. Where are the uninsured? And again, we see that this tract here has a really large circle because it's got over 6,000 people who are uninsured, but a lighter color because there aren't that many, as opposed to like this really dark red, higher percentage, but fewer people. Another type of mapping style is predominant mapping style. So here, instead of mapping 2 attributes, we're mapping 5 related attributes. And the way we did that is just by adding more and more attributes here in this change style option panel. So here we've got different types of living arrangements for children. These really dark yellow show us that overwhelmingly it's married couple families that children are living in, but a lighter yellow is still the most frequent type of living arrangement, but not by as much. And then the red is single female families, and these green areas are actually unmarried partner families. That's the most common type of children's living arrangement. One last mapping style that can really help illuminate patterns is what we call above and below. This is great when you want to anchor your map on a particular critical value, such as a goal. So the California State Department of Health had a goal that 95% of all kindergartners would have all the required immunizations. And so we can show those school districts who met that goal in one color and those who have a little bit of room for improvement in a different color. And we do this here by choosing the above and below theme rather than the traditional high to low. Above and below lets us really play with setting these critical values and using all kinds of different diverging color ramps. So those are just a few of the maps that you'll find in Living Atlas, a few different mapping styles to get you started thinking about how you want to display the data that makes sense in a way for you. We also have this great site called Esri Maps for Public Policy, where we've got a growing collection of the web maps that you just saw and more about all kinds of topics on veterans, on housing, on senior well-being, and you name it. If you find a map in here that you like, you can easily add it to your favorites, and then it's ready to go in terms of using it in a story map or a dashboard or configurable app. And then this site also has a resources tab where we've got all kinds of blog posts and ArcGIS Learn lessons, video tutorials to help you get started really understanding your community and displaying data in a way that can really highlight ways and areas where there's an opportunity to intervene. And with that, I'll turn it back over to June.
Thank you so much, Diana. So now we're actually going to move over to Rebecca. And Rebecca will be showing us how to plan your organization's outreach and action through data-driven decisions.
Thank you so much, June. Let me share my monitor. Can you all see that all right? Looks good. All right, so my name's Rebecca. I'm an account manager for nonprofits here at Esri, and I've also been working to examine racially equitable response efforts to COVID-19. One of the amazing things we've seen is the way the GIS community, and specifically nonprofits, are really getting involved and playing a critical role in all of the response efforts going on. And I think this is especially true in some of the outreach work that addresses communities at high risk of COVID-19. As we've seen, COVID-19 is amplifying health, racial, and economic inequality to create disparities in outcomes in the US, and we're seeing these same issues play out across the globe. Both illnesses and death rates are higher in communities of color in the US. Therefore, it is extremely important that advocacy, testing, and additional support is placed in communities that are the most vulnerable. So we're going to be looking at siting, testing, and PPE advocacy work. Today, I want to demonstrate this workflow to you and showing an example of a way a nonprofit can use data analysis in their work. I'm going to be taking on the role of a community outreach coordinator. And my nonprofit wants to boost testing sites and resources in high-risk communities. To do so, I have a budget to allocate staffing resources to community centers we operate in. As with many nonprofits, I'm limited in funding, so I need to choose the best 3 locations to allocate these resources. So we're going to go through a couple different pieces of this workflow. The first is better understanding the situation, so situational awareness work. Next will be mapping resources to understand where the best place is to place additional aid. And the last is creating some communication pieces to share out with my organization, as well as with donors and interested parties. So I'm going to go over to the web. In the first place I'm going to go, I'm located in Redlands, so I'm going to go to my communities, my county's dashboards and information about COVID-19 to better understand the situation right now. Both San Bernardino and Riverside County have released great websites that are sharing information about the disease, and they're actually all using Esri resources to do so. So these are different configurations of dashboards. When I'm looking at the confirmed case rate by race and ethnicity in Riverside County, we're seeing that the disease is more strongly affecting individuals of different minority statuses. This helps me understand that I definitely want to place more resources in those communities. I can also look at where the disease is most prominent. All right, so given this situational awareness, I'm going to go over to Community Analyst, which is an online tool that is, I really like it. I'm going to just show you a couple different workflows we can do in here. It's very intuitive, so here I go, adding data. I'm going to start by importing a file. So I actually have a file of different community centers where I could potentially place these resources. So I'm going to add that file here, importing the file. Another great thing is if perhaps you don't have those locations mapped, you can also use our business lookup and facility lookup tools to search for addresses and locations and find all of the relevant places on the map. So for example, I searched for hospitals once in here and got thousands of results of different hospitals in the area. So I just corrected, it wasn't able to find that long data, but now it's got it. You can either do it by address or lat long, but right now I have both. Next, it's adding those points to the map. That's awesome. We've got all the 20 points placed on the map of different community centers. So next, the next question we have is, we're just putting those on the map here, and I'm going to save it as a layer. So now I have my resources on the map. Next, I want to see where I'm going to cite my resources. So I'm going to run a suitability analysis here. A suitability analysis is a great way to really look at different variables to help you make a more informed decision about where you're placing your time. So I'm going to create buffers around each of these sites. I can either do that by drive time or walk time. To simplify this, I'm just going to do a 10-minute drive time around each of these locations. You can also do multiple rings. If you're focusing on individuals who do not have cars, then you could consider using walk times instead. So now it's going to create these rings around each of my sites that I can use in my next analysis. Next, I'm going to add criteria as to what are the reasons I'm focusing on these. So I've actually already chosen some criteria here. We're looking at individuals who do not speak English, with no health insurance, on food stamps below the poverty line, and then a few specific minority populations as well. So I'm going to use these criteria. And right now what we're seeing is these different areas around the centers are being colored based on how the score that they're giving them as the importance of using that location. On the left, I have the choice to manipulate the percentage of importance that each of these variables has. And this is a really important place where you're going to want to engage with your community and with your staff and stakeholders to understand what are the most important variables, and do this as a collaborative effort so that you're looking at this from a holistic perspective of different individuals' needs. I can lock one variable. So say I'm really interested in the elderly population with no health insurance. I can lock that in, and now that's always going to be 33%. And then I can change the weight of other variables along with that. And as these change, you can see that on the map, we're getting a different final score for each of these centers. So say I've done this in a more collaborative way than right now, and I've chosen my top 3 sites. I'm going to choose one of these here. And the next step is finding a way of sharing this information out with interested parties. So I want to share this out, and honestly, there's a lot of different ways you can do this. Over here, we could create PDFs. We could export this as an Excel or different forms. You can create reports here. I could do a comparison between different sites to help as a decision tool. What I want to show you is the infographics capability. So infographics are a little more interactive. You can see the results in a way of sharing out on the web. I think is a really great way to do that. You can also use it as a PDF. The team for this tool has actually created a specific coronavirus impact planning report. And you can see there's a lot of other reports that are pre-configured. You can start with one of these and then customize it based on different pieces that you need. So if I hit that edit here, I could change the information displaying in each of these panels and the widgets and all of that. So these were different variables that that team found important for looking at coronavirus impact planning. And this is really exciting as well. I can go in here and explore each of these variables in more depth. So that's true for all of these. So for food stamps, it's a really rewarding experience for the user as well. So this is 2 pages. And one of the really cool things about this is that I can click export here, and I can export this as a PDF image or dynamic HTML. And that means that you could embed this in your website. So say you have one for the different areas you're working, you can start sharing that out as a decision tool, as a communication tool, and also you could share this out with your funders and donors to show the impact of the work you're having in and in which communities you're working. So with that, let me switch back over to my slide deck, And just go quickly over what we did here. So we looked at the dashboards from our county websites. We then added our locations to a map, performed a suitability analysis, and lastly, we're able to share those results out with our stakeholders. And this is just showing a great workflow that gives you data-driven decisions. It's easy to use and allows you to create actionable products that you can share out with your own community. And so with that, I'm going to switch it back over to June. And thanks so much, everyone, as well.
Thank you so much, Rebecca. So now I would finally like to turn it over to Amanda Stenko, who's going to talk through an example of using the ArcGIS platform to address challenges faced in the community.
Thank you. Okay, so I'm going to walk through the food bank's home delivery workflow with ArcGIS. This is created in response to COVID-19. Millions of people face hunger every day. Food insecure citizens often don't know where they'll get their next meal. Hunger exists in every community, and food banks are a vital resource to feed those most in need of food. Since March of 2020, when stay-at-home orders were put in place, community food banks have had to alter their normal operations in order to respond to the needs of the community. Home delivery of food boxes is one method to get food to the most vulnerable population that is food insecure. Now, there are multiple challenges faced in order to meet the needs of the community. There are specific requirements of who qualifies for home food delivery. It's the 65 and over population and those with compromised immune systems. The staff do not have the capacity to micromanage this home delivery operation. They're under a great amount of pressure. They're no longer able to accept volunteers on site due to social distancing guidelines. However, they're determined to respond to the needs of the community, but at this point, they just have information in spreadsheets, and there's no maps of their delivery locations. Another challenge is the volunteers. Well, since they're no longer able to assist in the warehouse, they do want to help, and they are able to help with these deliveries. Addressing the needs of the community with ArcGIS, we can help the qualifying community get food, we can help the volunteers self-manage their deliveries, and we can help the staff respond to the community and see the full delivery operation. This is the full operations view that visualizes the delivery locations on a map. Here I can see the unassigned delivery requests in yellow and those that have been assigned to delivery drivers in blue. This is a list of the delivery requests that have not been met yet. I can click for more information. And here's a list of the deliveries that have been assigned to volunteers. Here we have a gauge that shows all the requests so far. There's been 11 requests and 3 have been fulfilled. And here we have household size. So this is important information for the administrative staff at the food bank to understand. But also, how do we even get here? So first, we start with a survey. So we want to get these food requests from the community who qualify. So that we created a smart form, so if they don't qualify, they're guided through these questions and they come to some food banks in their area where they can go to pick up food. However, if they do qualify, the smart form behaves a little differently. Say they are in a high-risk group, a few more questions will come up, including their contact information, their location, and a few additional questions. So this is how the community can add requests, but also the administrative staff need to add requests also. So they can add a single request here, just as the community. Say a phone call comes in and they need to answer one request at a time. But also they might have to add a list. So they have multiple, just like a CSV file, they have multiple requests that they've already vetted and they want to add all of these at once, not just one at a time. So in order to do that, they just browse for the file here. That's the CSV file we just looked at. So it's going to append to these survey questions that we have. So it's going to say, I want to go through these instructions. I'm going to append to this target layer. There's some location information. It already sees that I have address, city, and zip code in my spreadsheet, but I'm going to put in unit. I'm going to match that up as well. Next is field information. So there are these first few vetting questions that I don't have in my spreadsheet, and that's fine because this list has already been vetted. It's already connected that I have name, address, unit, but I also do have a household field I'm going to connect, and I have some additional comments. I'll put that here. Next, so we filled out everything we needed, and I can add this to the map. So it found all 7 locations shown by these larger circles. So when I submit and clear, now you can see we've added many more delivery requests at once. So as a volunteer, I want to assign myself one of these deliveries, one of these requests. So to do that, I come to another application. We're looking at the same assigned and unassigned yellow and blue here. So the yellow is unassigned. As a driver, I want to assign myself one of these. So I'll click on one of these unassigned. I see some more information about where this is going to. And I'm going to assign this to myself now. There we go. I'll pick it up this afternoon. And dropping off at port. I can spell. Okay. And as soon as I close this, now it turns blue. So it shows that it's been assigned. So going back to our dashboard now, we can see it's been updated. So now there's a total of 18 requests have come in, 4 of which have been assigned to a driver. Here's the one I just assigned myself with this information. And everything in the map here has been updated, all of the household size information, all of these lists. And additionally, there's a heat map here. So this shows where the greatest need is, where the most requests are coming from. And this is important to communicate to stakeholders so we can address where this greater food need is overall. And I want to go back for a second here. Sorry about that. So addressing challenges with Arcgis, we were able to create a community survey to get home food requests one at a time. We were also able to create an administrative uploader to add single or multiple requests at once, and a volunteer applications where they can self-assign themselves these deliveries, as well as an administrative view for the food bank staff to see this operation in real time. So this whole entire workflow is one system, the Arcgis system, one data layer from that survey, and all linked to 4 synchronized applications. So this is the food bank's home delivery workflow that was created with the Arcgis platform in response to COVID-19. And with that, I'm going to hand that back to June. Thank you.
Thank you so much. So as you can see, ArcGIS allows your organization to understand your community, plan your response, and act out your mission to provide resources within the community. Throughout this work, you can help your organization to iterate so you can better respond to shifting community needs. All right, moving to what is coming next. So this year we actually have a virtual UC. So there should be a function in your webinar screen to raise your hand. We would like to see how many of you have already been able to sign up for this year's user conference. If you're able to find that function and just give us a show of hands. Very cool. So I do see a few. It is awesome to see how many people have already signed up. I think right now we're going to drop a link in the chat to that user conference registration page for those of us who have not. And we will also be sending a follow-up email with a curated list of nonprofit and sustainable world events at UC, so that email will be sent out in the coming days. We are planning an enriching event that aligns with our commitment to diversity, inclusion, belonging, and supporting your impactful work globally. Although the format of this year's UC is going to look different, our goal in this virtual format is to make UC as accessible as possible, which has actually made registration free to all users current on maintenance. So I believe everybody who's attending this webinar should have free registration, because this was the invitation was sent out to people who are current on registration. So the full conference is free. You will need to register on our website. So users will have access to the plenary sessions, the Partner Expo, Esri product and industry showcases, technical sessions, user presentations, the map gallery, as well as networking chat rooms, the ability to schedule meetings with Esri staff, and the ability to talk to other nonprofit organizations. So our hope, especially in 2020, is that we will provide you with inspiration and ideas to continue interconnecting our world. So where can you find the nonprofit team during user conference? We did want to let you know what to look for. Many of us will actually be attending the plenary sessions along with Esri users, but during expo hours, users will have the opportunity to chat with us live, schedule 15-minute meetings with account managers and other Esri staff, and visit the virtual kiosks for other nonprofit organizations. We will be listed under terms. There'll be kind of like a search engine. We'll be listed under the terms sustainable world, nonprofit, racial equity and social justice, humanitarian, and conservation. Important note, all times for any expo hours or plenary sessions will be listed in Pacific Standard Time. For the expo, there's going to be an afternoon session on Monday, and then morning and afternoon sessions on Tuesday and Wednesday. When you log into the website, there are going to be kind of virtual queues that you can place yourself into. So when you log in, you'll see either the expos going on right now, and you can dive into that and search for topics like Esri products, so ArcGIS Pro or desktop products, ArcGIS online things, drone to map, things like that. You can also search for other Esri programs, so the Esri Partner Network or the educational program, and then you can look for local government solutions and basically any topic that is typically found on the expo floor in San Diego. So to continue interconnecting the nonprofit community after user conference, we are soon going to be launching a nonprofit-centered Geonet forum to connect Esri super users with other members in this community. If you use Geonet now and would like to be involved with the creation of this new community, please feel free to reach out and let us know. This is intended to be a space to share workflows, ask questions, and just broaden the scope and impact of the work that we'll be doing together. And of course, we are always accessible via email at nonprofit_inquiry@esri.com. This email alias is monitored by a few members of the Global Business Development team here at Esri, so we can respond to or direct your inquiry accordingly. Before we open up to questions, we do want to say thank you so much for attending today, as well as thank you for the work that you're doing. And your interest in growing your work with Esri by using ArcGIS. We always want to make sure we provide resources to our users, so we will be sending out an email soon with links to the resource hubs, any templates or training videos, and more. So our hope is that these resources provide inspiration for the good work your organizations are doing. So now we are able to take a few questions, but don't forget to stay logged in to complete the survey in just a few minutes. So Emily, I know you've been monitoring the chat. Do you notice any question themes that we can shed some light on?
Hi, June. Thank you. And I have been responding to, first let me say this is Emily Swanson here. I have been responding to several questions throughout the course of the webinar. And I think all attendees should be able to see both those questions and the answers in the questions pane. some of those that are common, will the webinar be recorded? Yes is the answer. You will receive a link once that recording has been published. You'll receive a link via email, along with several other links that we have mentioned during this session. We were just asked who is considered a super user for the Geonet community that we're building for nonprofits. We consider anyone that is already active in Geonet and contributing to different spaces as a super user and someone who may help us to bring the nonprofits space, the Geonet from nonprofit space to life. So if you are one of those people and you think you have some advice or guidance to share for what we could do in our new Geonet space, please reach out via that email. I also want to say, while I'm going through questions here, do drop more questions into the question panel. I'm happy to answer those. As far as data that Diana was showing through the Living Atlas, there's a question about it being US-centric. And though the examples that Diana showed were all based in the US, that does not mean that they're exclusive, that the data is exclusive to the US. There are actually there's a drop down on the Living Atlas page that allows you to filter by region or country. And then within Esri's demographic and lifestyle data variables, the online browser as well lets you search by country. Let me see. How can we make layers and maps viewable for the public in a website? I've shared a link in the response for you can share out your maps from ArcGIS Online by first publishing those into an application. Maybe that's a story map, maybe that's into Web App Builder. And then you can actually grab the HTML link and embed that into your existing website, or have a unique link that stands on its own and users can visit to interact with your map. I do want to give a shout out to our business partners. June had mentioned some of the support avenues for nonprofit organizations. Those include Esri Professional Services. Those include our network of business partners. We're very fortunate to have over 2,500 business partners that are supporting different areas of business for all Esri customers. But there are some nonprofits or some business partners that focus specifically on nonprofits and nonprofit workflows. So if you visit the Esri Business Partner Directory and search the keyword nonprofit, you'll see some of those organizations that are here to help. And then the final resource, support resource that June showed was GIS Core, which is the network of volunteers, GIS volunteers that is able to jump to action in supporting all organizations, but many nonprofits with their GIS needs by pairing them with the appropriate volunteer. As far as the technical assistance, what technical assistance does Esri provide, especially one-on-one to nonprofits? There are some great community resources that we've floated here, including Geonet for sort of envisioning and seeing what others are doing. There's also our industry pages on the Esri website that are kind of painting this like art of the possible picture, if you will. As far as working in a sort of consultative engagement or one-on-one to handle and to do an envisioning workshop or something of the sort, that would be an Esri Professional Services engagement, or one with a business partner, or potentially a GIS Core volunteer, as I'd mentioned. A great place to start with this kind of inquiry is reaching out to our nonprofit program representatives at that nonprofit_inquiry@esri.com email alias to work with you based on what your specific vision and needs are. I've also seen the question here about addresses in Community Analyst and the consumption of credits for uploading those addresses. So the the process of bringing a spreadsheet of addresses into the map and turning them into points on the map is called geocoding. And geocoding is a process that consumes service credits, sorry. That is 40 credits per 1,000 uploads or 1,000 addresses. There are also other functions within ArcGIS Online that do consume credits, and you can get a comprehensive breakdown of that by searching understand credits, and you'll see the ArcGIS documentation that there's a table there that shows all of those features that consume credits. Now there are areas where bringing those processes onto the desktop or within an ArcGIS Pro environment, especially analytics, can help to you to not consume credits for functions that you do in ArcGIS Online. For geocoding specifically, there is an exciting offer for Street Map Premium data for members of our nonprofit program. They can access a local Street Map Premium network dataset to perform unlimited geocodes in a pro environment. If you're an organization that does consume a lot of credits for geocoding operations, I encourage you to reach out to us at nonprofit_inquiry@esri.com to see if the Street Map Premium offer is a fit and available to you. I see we just have a question here about limitations doing work from an iPhone or tablet environment. And ArcGIS Online is browser-based and accessible on all devices. So apart from being a smaller screen size, the functionality is there. Something else that I would also highlight, here is that any sort of published web maps or apps you can view and end users can view and consume on their devices. And there are features within the publisher in ArcGIS Online that let you view what it will look like, what that experience will look like on an iPhone or on a tablet. We just received a question about Esri services to executives to convey what the capabilities are. I think the best place to point you is to our website that gives that high level overview of what's possible using GIS. For those that are not familiar with GIS, there are many resources on the website. We can share those, share some of those as well in a follow-up email. But we also did a webinar last year called GIS Patterns of Use for Nonprofits that's posted on YouTube now. And that gives that 30,000-foot flyover of what is GIS and how is it valuable to nonprofit organizations. It is an hour long, but it's certainly a link that I'd recommend sharing with decision makers to understand what is the real value in GIS for my organization. I believe that covers all of the questions that have been added into our questions panel. Give anyone, oh, I see another one that's come in. I have a creator license. Does that give me full access to App Studio? The answer is App Studio Standard is still an add-on tool. There is, very excitingly, as there is with many things, a discount for nonprofit program members. So you can reach out to us at the nonprofit_inquiry@esri.com to understand what that discount is for the App Studio Standard product. Though all of Esri's developer tools at the basic level are available to the user community, and you can access the online developer tools short of App Studio Standard at esri.com/developers. I see another question in the chat about what is the difference between business analyst and community analyst? And the short answer to that is these tools are very much similar. They include access to all of the same data sets and ability to perform the same workflows. they're just packaged a bit differently for our, the commercial side of the house versus those in the public sector or those in the nonprofit space. I see a question here about a crowdsourcing tool that we recommend. I've recently, just an anecdotal sort of experiences, I've recently seen Survey 123 embedded into story maps that allows the viewer of a story map to actually go in and add data to that public web form that then populates the web map in the story map. I think that that's a very engaging sort of crowdsourcing activity or crowdsourcing format. Another to highlight is Arcgis Hub. And that's not only crowdsourcing data, but opening this two-way street from those administering the hub to the community users and vice versa. So a really collaborative environment for community GIS. And then I see another question here about what is the recommended knowledge transfer or training classes that should be pursued to learn ArcGIS Online and Community Analyst. There are a few resources I would love to highlight here as far as what and they range from no cost to paid training courses. There is what is called Learn ArcGIS, which is a pathways or a series of engaging real world lessons that help someone to build experience in different tools. You can do this along this type of user path or around a product, and that's learn.arcgis.com. Those are all free resources. We're always adding more. So there were several that have been available or several that have been made available or created throughout the COVID-19 pandemic. And there are many more that the team is working on in line with the Racial Equity Initiative. So these are always compelling lessons that speak to the moment for our GIS users as well. Some of the tools, such as Community Analyst, actually include tutorials within the product, meaning you can go to the bar across the top to see information about the different tools or guide you through how to use them. For both Community Analysts Online and Business Analysts Online, there are YouTube channels with short videos that give you insight into how to use the tools and the workflows. And then moving into the paid opportunities, paid training opportunities, you can visit esri.com/training. And here there are both e-learning courses. So for anyone that is paying their maintenance, if you have current software, you're able to access all of those e-learning resources, which are at your own pace, sort of web courses and seminars. There are also instructor-led courses, which are really exciting. I think sometimes for myself, at least, learning with an instructor in the room actually prompts me to go through the coursework and not put it off. And so that instructor-led path gets you into it. They range from a half a day to 3 days based on, or even 4 days based on the content. And you can see those on our training site. They are paid courses. Of course, at this time, all courses are being done in a virtual environment, but we always offer them in a virtual environment or in times that where social distancing is not on our Esri campuses. That is, again, at esri.com/training. Very exciting. As with most things, nonprofits receive a 40% discount, or nonprofit program members receive a 40% discount on any of the courses that you'll see there. I recognize that we have just a minute left here. So any questions that we did not get to in the chat, we can review and follow up. And I'd encourage you to reach out to nonprofit_inquiry@esri.com with your specific question. But with that, I will say thank you to all for joining us today. And we will look forward to seeing you at the virtual user conference.